show with me, Dan, and my guest, Emma. How you doing, Emma?
I'm great. I feel like a pop star with this microphone set up today.
Nice, yeah.
Although the reality is that I'm just speaking into a coat hanger wrapped in your mum's tights, but still, I feel a bit extra.
That is it. That's behind the scenes of this show. Is the first pop shield I made, which is a shield to stop plosives, because when you use a that will come out as a bit distorted, but you get a bit of material in front of the mic, and it stops that distortion sound. So that's why I use my mum's tights and a coat hanger, and that's what you've got.
Luckily, they've been washed.
Yeah, let's hope. But yeah, so this is the second podcast I've done in person, and yeah, Emma is my girlfriend. We've been together for 4.5 years. And yeah, so that's how I know Emma. I've mentioned her quite a few times on previous podcast episodes. And yeah, so the reason I wanted to chat to Emma today, right? The reason I wanted to chat to Emma today is you have worked for charities a couple of times. So Emma's just reaching for her tea, because we had a discussion before recording that Emma would drink her tea when I'm talking, and that's what she's doing right now. She's having a sip. Yeah,
I'm banned from slurping.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so Emma's worked for charities a couple of times. Once in New Zealand, and now currently working for a charity in England. And you've also volunteered over the years for various charities. So yeah, I just thought it'd be an interesting thing to talk about, the sort of inside charities, really. I think they're sort of, I think they're sometimes misunderstood. Some people don't know. I think sometimes people don't, just fully understand what goes on. I've never worked full time for a charity. So yeah, thought it'd be an interesting thing to chat about today. So yeah, maybe you could start with just briefly talking about what your first full-time job was in a charity, and then go on to talk about what you do now.
So I guess I got into fundraising kind of out of default, because that's what I do now. So I started out of my first charity job in New Zealand, and that was at a blind charity. And that was just a short-term placement working in trusts and foundations. So that's an area of fundraising that I had no idea even existed. But yeah, basically partnering and applying for funding from charitable trusts and foundations. So yeah, that was a really great insight into the world of fundraising. And also, because it was at a blind charity, we had guide dog puppies in the office that were training. So it was just, it was a great work setup.
So what are trusts and foundations then?
I know you're going to ask that question.
Well, just for it doesn't have to be the by the letter of what exactly it is in the dictionary.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an actual definition for like what a trust is. I guess a lot of people, wealthy families would often make like a family trust.
Right.
So they might leave in their will, rather than giving money to certain charities, they might just sort of create their own trust.
Right.
And then there'll be sort of trustees that look after the trust. It could be family members, or it could be people that are sort of interested in the work that they would want the money to go towards, if that makes sense.
So, for example, then would your charity that you worked for, would you then try to contact like these families, or would they contact you? Like the trusts like that, like family trusts?
Yeah, so the way it worked was mainly they would have funding rounds that would open at various points of the year. They would be very clear on the types of funding that they're interested in applying for. Like there'd be some trusts that would only want to fund like activities for young people to do.
Right.
Or they want to fund research or medical. Medical research.
So it's sort of like a bit of a bidding, like a bit of a game. Like they put it out there and they say, this is what we're looking for. So I guess with the organisation you worked for, if let's say, for example, the person who had died and left a trust, they were blind themselves, then the children or whoever's taking care of the trust, they might say, was it like once a year or something? They'll say like, oh, okay, we're looking for charities that help people who are visually impaired and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when
exactly.
you would sort of like bid for it type thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's also quite a few trusts. So it's not just sort of people that leave money in a will and create a trust. There's also a few foundations that we were working with who sort of they generate income from the community and then they redistribute it. So this is really interesting. So there's one trust and they basically collected money from all the like fruit machines that you get in casinos and at bidding machines.
Okay.
So they collect a proportion of the money. Obviously, some money goes back to like the casino.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a certain trust that would take a certain amount of money from that and then they'd redistribute it to sort of causes that they deemed.
Oh, right. So
worthy.
what, they just get connected with the casino and then the casino would say, oh, well, you can take a portion of.
Yeah,
this.
I was really surprised because I always assumed like stuff like casinos and like betting companies. It was all just for profit.
Okay.
Entirely. I don't actually know. I don't know what like the trust scene's like in England. I don't know if they've got similar stuff here.
Right.
But that was really interesting. And then similarly, there are trusts that sort of do their own fundraising and then distribute that.
I get
to other
there's
causes.
a Lions Club and Rotary Foundation, those
yes,
sort of things. Yeah,
exactly.
because they're like big, established worldwide things.
Yeah, it's like a cycle. They fundraise and they sort of distribute as well.
Right.
And
Okay.
donate.
So they were the sort of organisations you were dealing with in New Zealand when you were working for the blind charity.
Yeah.
You was basically. So what was your job? Were you just like pitching to them, or?
Essentially, yeah. Writing applications to them. If there's, projects that they want to know more about for funding, we'll obviously go back to them with information. But yeah, it's quite. When you take the charity like word out of it, it does sound quite salesy. You are essentially trying to like sell yourself, or even like a job application, trying to convince them why they should pick you to fund.
So was it? Did you find it quite difficult? Because I guess you need to know quite a bit about the charity to sell it. Was it quite difficult at the start because you needed to know certain facts and figures or certain things about the charity to then sell to get the funding? Or
Yeah, I mean, when I first started out, because I was new, I was sort of given trusts to deal with who would basically give every year almost without fail.
Oh, okay.
So it was more a case of just sort of like refreshing the application from previous years and just being like, yeah, we still desperately need funding.
Right.
It was more, the new trust that we'd sort of find that would be for other people to deal with. I was the newbie.
During your time there, did you do any brand new ones? Did you get any new sort of trusts on board or anything like that? Or was it mainly you were just sort of redoing the ones from previous years?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I can't think of any new trust that I had to pitch to like for the first time.
Yeah. But I guess it gives you a grounding then.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was an amazing learning experience.
So then from there, so you came back to England. We came back last year, and then you were looking for jobs. Mm-hmm. And then, so what's your job now? What job did you land?
So I work in fundraising, which I don't normally say because I feel like there's negative associations with fundraising. So I'd say I work in philanthropy.
Okay.
So it's in the fundraising department, but with high net worth individuals. So it's kind of similar to the trust in terms of like matching them with projects that we think they'd like to fund. Mm-hmm. And also a lot of the people we deal with are trustees of charities in their own right as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was kind of a nice transition.
So what do you think is negative about fundraising? Or what do you think other people think is negative or the stigmas attached to fundraising? Why do you say philanthropy and not fundraising?
I guess when I say to people that I work in fundraising, I often get like almost like a look of sympathy, like, oh, you must be so cold working on the streets all day, like signing people up to support you, or oh, is it like really like tiring having to work in a call center, and you must need so much like willpower to be able to do that. And I think it is sort of associated with like lower skilled on the door sales sort of recruitment.
Right.
Whereas there's so many different avenues in fundraising, and especially the philanthropy fundraising that I'm in, it's a lot more intricate. It's a lot more, I don't want to sound pretentious, but it's a lot more like strategic than just knocking on someone's door and being like, oh, there's 20 million people living in poverty right now.
Sure.
You need to donate £5. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess any area, any department, there's entry level stuff, and then there's just jobs that are naturally more strategic, or you have to know a little bit more about how it works, and those sort of jobs. Do you use sort of those sort of fundraising techniques in your charity? Not you personally, but do you have people sort of on the street, sort of trying to sign people up and knocking door to door or calling?
No, we don't have any outsourcing fundraisers that I'm aware of.
What does that mean?
So people that are actually calling out to people,
Right,
on the phone, in the street. We do at Christmas time. So the charity that I work for, about 75% of our income comes from Christmas. We have a huge Christmas appeal. The charity's like known for its presence at Christmas time. So they do cold door drops, which is basically you don't even have to be on our system, but they'll send like an emergency appeal out every Christmas to, oh my gosh, I can't remember the number, but it's an insane amount of letters that we post at Christmas time. But that's a one-off. That's just for Christmas.
How do you because there's so many different forms of getting money from people, how do you react to it? Like, do you, as someone who, a customer, I guess, or a potential giver of charities, when you're cold called or you get a letter through the letterbox, or you get, the letterbox, what's it called? The
Postbox, letterbox.
No, what's the thing called in your door? Is that a letterbox?
Yeah. A letter slat? No, it's a letterbox, isn't it?
Is it? You get the letter through the I don't know, the cat flap, the door. I don't know. But anyway, so
oh my gosh.
what do you get how do you react to that? Like people approaching you on the street, or getting a random call, or having random stuff. Do you get a bit put off by that, or does it sometimes work for you, or?
I think I'm naturally a little bit more sympathetic to like cold callers and people in the street. Like I had someone from Greenpeace ring me a few months ago in the evening, and I was so tired. I had such a crap day at work, and I picked up the phone. I was like, "Oh God, it's a cold caller again." But actually, we had such a good chat. Yeah, I gave him not the benefit of the doubt, but I just thought, I'm going to listen to this guy and just engage in a conversation, because I think so many people just don't. And I don't know what it is, like, when they want to just sort of pass off the conversation before even hearing them out, or considering if they want to engage in the conversation. So I think working in a charity myself, I've become a bit more sympathetic to, hearing what they've got to say. And I find it really interesting, seeing all their marketing and comms come through, just to compare it to our work. So I do, find it interesting.
So you maybe were less sympathetic maybe before you did this sort of work, maybe. Because it is difficult, isn't it? It's a very difficult job, I think. And even though, we say it's low skilled, it is a certain type of person that can do it, I mean, you said before that you might struggle, to cold call and knock on doors and things like that. So it is a very difficult thing to try and get people interested, because I guess you get a lot of knockbacks in that sort of job, I can imagine. Just constantly trying and trying and trying.
Yeah, especially when you don't know, what their interests are as well. Especially when they're out on the street. Whereas I guess being a bit more clever about where you're going to try and target people, if there's an event that like falls into the remit of what your charity work is, you might be more likely to find people that would be interested in it. But it's such a gamble when you're cold calling and just grabbing people from the street.
So what I guess that ties into what you do. So what is philanthropy then, and what sort of strategies or what sort of things do you do to fundraise, or does your department do, or whatever? So
I mean, the philanthropy team. So we work with high net worth individuals. So they're people that would donate over £3,000 a year.
Okay.
So it's literally 3,000 to the sky's the limit. We've had six figures before. And it's more building a relationship with them initially and seeing what they want. And a lot of the time, they're already supporters of the charity, or they'll approach us and say, I really want to get involved, or, they feel really passionate about homelessness. Have we said it's a homeless charity?
I think so. Well, we haven't, then
We
we
have
have now.
Yeah, so generally they'll approach us first, or one of our current supporters might introduce them, and it's very much cultivating the relationship with them for the first year, just seeing what they're interested in, where they work, what, just general interests they've got, and we'll invite them in. We'll see if there's any sort of work they want to get involved with, and it's not just financial input we really appreciate from donors. It's also volunteering. We have people that sit on like interview panels, and they work on some of our like more strategic projects with our senior management as well. Because so many of these people have got expertise. You can't. We're not all experts ourselves. Especially in the fundraising team. Like we've got some amazing donors who specialise in the work that. That there's CEOs of like huge housing firms that, their input would be invaluable to sort of moving forward with our work. So we'll invite them to try and get more involved with the charity as well.
Is it difficult to find that balance between basically just trying to get money out of them, but at the same time, wanting it to be a more personal feeling relationship and wanting them to feel not just valued, not just like a bottomless pocket type thing. Is that difficult to try and strike that? But like, do you get people who are just put off and a bit, there are times when these high value donors they're pushed too far, so you're sort of like pushing for money out of them, and then they're just like, oh well, screw this, it doesn't feel personal anymore. Do you know what I mean? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a balance on both parties, and there's the expectations as well. I think a lot of the donors that we've got, they will be supporting other charities, and there'll be the expectations. They sort of, I guess they kind of already know the line, and if you're going to cross it. I think we've got such, like, the relationships we've got with donors is so much more personal. I don't think it really gets to a point that they would, like you said, almost take offense and just be like, no, that's too much. You're asking me for too much, because it doesn't work. It's not as black and white as just being like, give us 50 grand. Like, we'll work with them. We'll see what they're willing to give.
Have you never really had donors that have like, even not in that particular way, but have you had donors that have got annoyed or not happy with the service they're being provided? What sort of things do you get?
So I think it's interesting, because I think it's probably in the lower end of our portfolios. So they're sort of tiered, our donors, in the levels they're giving in. So I look after a portfolio that give between 3,000 and 10,000 a year. And they're the people that get more, not mass mailings, but it's not, their communications aren't as personal as a donor who would be donating 100 grand a year.
Do you give them,
naturally?
Do you give them quite a personal email? Is it quite, or not really?
They're, I think, as personal as you can make, like a sort of semi-large mailing. But I think because there's so many of them, to an extent, you do have to
copy and paste type thing.
Not copy and paste as such, but like, for example, there's some supporters who were really disgruntled at Christmas time because we asked them for a set amount, and they didn't appreciate that.
What do you mean?
Because I think they can take offence to it, because they can either think, sometimes it can be because we ask them for too little, and they feel threatened that we're like, we don't actually see their wealth or see how much capacity they have to give, which is really interesting that they get offended by that.
Yeah.
Some people, I've just lost my trail of thought.
You're just talking about, that people get offended because you're asking us for a set amount. Like you're saying at Christmas, you send out a set amount and people get upset with that. Yeah,
it's gone.
Yeah,
it's gone.
But why would they get upset for a set? When you say a set amount, is that not what you usually do? You just send out a set amount?
I think there's a lot of supporters that like. There's also some supporters that like to give very privately. They're very sorry. They like to stay private with their donations. They like to stay anonymous. They don't want to have like. I guess they don't like the fact that we've been looking at their donation history and we can see what they've been given to us over the last few years, and we make an estimate, because you never know if people's circumstances have changed. So some people take offence to that, and they'd rather just give what they feel like giving. They don't think it's right that we like estimate how much they can give depending on their wealth.
I guess that's what I mean is these people who, they can get annoyed because there's sort of like a business side to it, and that when that business side sort of comes out of like, we just want money from you type thing, then I guess it can upset people if they feel like they're just, a cash cow type thing. And it is the way to offset that by being quite personal, by talking to them, by engaging with their interests and stuff, or
yeah.
So with the charity you're working for now, did you know much about homelessness before? Were you interested in it? Had you experienced, not personally, but like, had you experienced any situations where you'd been in contact with people who are homeless, or what was your sort of, I don't know, your experiences and your views on homelessness before working for your current charity?
So I grew up in the depths of Cornwall, where homelessness is just not prevalent. Like, I don't think I'd seen a homeless person. I can't remember the first time I actually saw a homeless person. It must have been when I was a teenager, at least. So yeah, it wasn't anything that was sort of on my radar that I even considered was really a thing. And I think to what I saw in the media, I just assumed it was very much like it's their own fault they're homeless. They've obviously got problems with drink and drugs. That's what's caused it. Which is a huge misconception of people that become homeless, I think. So it wasn't actually until we went on a homeless walk in New Zealand. It was like a food distribution walk, wasn't it? We walked around Auckland with a few volunteers, handing out food packs to various people that were sleeping rough. And I think, I mean, it sounds awful because it's just the bare minimum, but I think recognising these people as humans, like, so many people dismiss rough sleepers, walk past them. They can ignore it because you can just walk into your nice warm home afterwards, or do you know what I mean? You can kind of turn a blind eye to it. But I think when you do push yourself to try and speak to these people, hear their stories and hear that they are literally just human beings like us, really stirred me, I guess.
Well, I remember when we were on these, because I remember you were very scared of homeless people, weren't you?
Yeah.
You're very scared. And that's, it's understandable, especially if you've never grown up around it. You've never really known anything of it. It's only ever been on TV or in the news or whatever. But I remember a moment when you had a real connection with a homeless woman. And I don't know if you want to talk through that just after you've had your sip of tea. But yeah, I don't know if you want to sort of set what that moment was like and what that was.
It was a very emotional moment, wasn't it? So I basically was chatting to a woman who we gave some food out to, and she,
I think, toiletries as well, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah. She pulled me down and she showed me her arm and showed me bruises on her arm, and told me that she'd been raped that morning, and has been suffering from ongoing abuse. And the homeless shelter that was in Auckland, it was a shelter that provided emergency like blankets and clothes and toiletries. She said it was all led by men, and the man who raped her was in there on a daily basis, so she didn't feel like she could even go in there and get help. And I said, "Oh, well, go to the police. Like, you can report it." But she said, "I did," and they just dropped me back here. And it's unfathomable that in, like, I don't know what year it was, but 21st century, like, we shouldn't be, it shouldn't be humane that we're treating people like that. And people are still, being left out in the cold, literally in the cold, in the dark, after experiencing something so horrific. It just really highlighted a lot of, I don't know, societal flaws that we've got.
I guess it's that, because you were in bits. Like, we walked away and you were just streaming with tears, and I guess it's the hopelessness, isn't it? Especially when she says, "I've called the police," and the police, there's nothing they can do.
Yeah, I think that's it. Because then we were walking away and we were like, "What can we do?" Like, obviously you can offer, immediate support, a hug and some food and some toiletries, but, like, God knows how long she was. I don't know. Yeah, we've got no idea where she is now. If she managed to get some sort of help or get housed, or
I think that's why, in my opinion, homeless charities are so important because, again, this is just my opinion and it might be a bit controversial, but I don't give to people on the street anymore. Like this program was great because you're going out and it wasn't even really about the food and the stuff you were given. It was more just making that contact, and the people who'd set it up and were doing it for years, they knew all these homeless people. Like they had a good relationship with them, and they would then be able to take them into more sustainable paths, I think, and chat to them about housing or whatever. But yeah, now I do feel, I felt for a couple of years, even before we did this, these homeless walks every month, wasn't it? That giving directly to the homeless, like just giving someone money on the street, I don't personally like to do that anymore. And I felt like I had to make a decision because, especially in London and in any built-up city, really, you're faced with it so much, and it's just this feeling of guilt. Like everyone feels guilty, but people don't know what to do, and I think if you want to do something to help homeless, I think it's better to give to a homeless charity, because
I think it's a very personal choice on whether you want to give to someone on the street, and like that's what we say, because we don't want to say there's necessarily right or wrong, and of course it's of course these people need their immediate needs met. I guess this is why I think it's so important that overheads, we sort of break the taboo about giving overheads to charities, or when people donate, they say, oh, they spend too much money on their overhead, so I don't want to donate. But overheads are so crucial to working towards achieving the long-term goals. You're funding things like the research and identifying where the needs are, what the needs are.
So what are overheads? Just basically salaries and stuff?
Yeah, so basically admin costs. So basically any costs that aren't direct items or equipment that you're physically giving someone. So it can be salaries, it can be leases for office space, internet,
post-it notes.
Yeah, all that jazz.
I guess all the stuff that people would say, oh well, it's not going to the actual people who need it. So what's your view on that? I know that someone from Oxfam told me a while ago that the normal sort of thing that some charities aim for, or even some people who give to charities expect, is like 20% max spent on admin. She disagreed with that. She thinks it's not actually that important. But what do you think? Do you think that? How do you feel about sort of the admin side of it? Do you think we should be the charities should spend quite a lot on salaries and things like that? Or do you think that staff should take that cut in their salaries so that the money can go more to whatever cause it is?
Absolutely not. I think it's a real shame that there's this sort of collective idea that people who work at charities do so out of the kindness of their heart. I mean, of course, we've all got that drive when you work for a charity, like you're passionate about the cause, but at the same time, the charity is still running as a business. It's still a workplace for employees. Like, I think to be able to attract and retain qualified and skilled staff, you need to treat them right, and you need to offer a competitive salary. You need to attract a good management to get systems in place, because otherwise there's no point in giving money to a physical item if there's no evidence to say that it's needed. So I think staff are often overlooked as we're just doing it voluntary or out of the kindness of our heart, and especially in this country where it's so expensive to live, like how can we be expected to just work on like minimum wage, especially in places like London? So
yeah, no, I agree. I think it's something that's not talked about, and I mean we could be accused of being biased because you work for a charity and you're my girlfriend who work for a charity, but I think it's super important. Like if you want to have the best, like you say, the best people let's just say the example of the homelessness thing. So people who give to a homelessness charity, they want to see, ultimately they don't necessarily, I don't think, want that money just to go directly to a homeless person. Otherwise, you might as well just literally go on the street and give that money to a homeless person.
Yeah.
They want to see the best quality care and best quality service provided to homeless people. That's surely what most people want when they're given to a homeless charity. And if you want to provide high quality service, high quality care, then you want to get people who have high quality and have a lot of skills and are good at what they do. And it's sort of like this unsaid thing or this taboo thing, like you say, that charities should just be. I think it's just idealism and idealistic of just to say, oh, they're all just running around, everyone's just being nice to each other, and I don't need money, I just need the goodness of my own heart to help people. And that's great if you're a volunteer, and that's what volunteering is there for. But if you're providing a very professional service and you're dealing with people who have extremely complex issues, whether it's housing or abuse, problems with identity or whatever it is, you need people who know what they're doing to do that. Otherwise you might as well say, well, any service that does any good, then they should be cut. The NHS nurses, oh well, the money should go to the patients, it shouldn't go to the nurses. It's a similar sort of thing, isn't it?
Totally. And I think as well, I wonder if it's almost a cultural thing and how much we want instant gratification. When you donate, you almost want to see the effects straight away, don't you? Whereas, and this is what I like about working in philanthropy, is it's so much more longer term, and the donors are so much more interested in how they can help achieve, our 5-year plan. They'll fund a salary of a mental health coach or a researcher for a whole year, and the effects that, or the impact that has, is so much more than just providing one night shelter for a homeless person. I mean, obviously, money would be a lot different.
But no, I know what you're saying. It's that longer term thing. I mean, it's that old sort of thing about, like, you give someone a fish and they'll eat for a day, give them a fishing rod and they'll, eat for a year or whatever. It's creating, it's people who can create that sustainability for homeless people.
I think it's the most sustainable investment to be able to make to a charity, funding overheads, if I'm honest. Probably more so for the bigger charities, because the bigger charities, they have more breadth to do research and, like, political work, and especially the job the company that I work for, charity that I work for, because it is so political and there is so much research constantly being done on homelessness. That's a sort of longer term stuff that is really going to make a difference on where we're at with homelessness in the next 5-10 years, rather than, alleviating the problem after it's happened. It's actually trying to fix the root cause of it to prevent it happening in the first place.
Do you think there's a limit though? Like, do you think you would get quite put off if there was a certain amount of overheads? Like, for me personally, I quite like that, the CEO of Oxfam only gets, like, they've limited their salary, or like I quite like to hear it when CEOs or the sort of top dogs in charities cut their salaries, or I do feel that there is a limit to it though.
Sure. I think it depends what the charity is as well, and where most of the funding goes. I think, for example, when I worked at the blind charity that I was at in New Zealand, a lot of the funding was for expensive equipment, so audiobooks for our clients, the training of guide dogs, and all the stuff that came with dogs, walking sticks, like braille versions of books. Whereas the most of the bulk of the work at the charity that I work for is coaching, so it's one-on-one coaching with a specialized tutor, and that there's no real physical component of funding you can get other than paying for the salary of that person to be there to give advice and to support that person that's experiencing homelessness. So there's not, I think it depends what it is at the bulk of funding. I think it depends on the purpose of the charity and what they're doing and what they're providing. It's very different if it's physical stuff that needs to be paid for.
I think in the end, like, it's very complex, isn't it? I think if you want to be, if you care about what happens to your money, and you do care about, charities, and you do have a strong, a strong opinion somewhat on how charities use their money, then I think look into it, because it's fair enough. There are some charities who do take too much and they don't use it in the right way. There's hundreds of thousands of charities in the world. There's going to be a lot that are going to be awful and, corrupt and take too much. But I think it's a case of doing a bit of research and just seeing what you want to give money to. And I think in that way, it is like a business. You choose what you want. You don't have to give your money to any charity. You can choose what charity you give to. And over time, if if like a documentary comes out and you've been giving to Greenpeace, for example, and apparently Greenpeace have been like hiding away loads of money and spending it on drugs, whatever, then you just stop giving, and then you can judge other people for giving, but in the end it's up to you. It's a free market of charities, and if you feel like it's above board and you feel like it's doing a good thing, then give away and do what you can.
Yeah, I do. I think we can have a very simplified view of charities, can't we? Just assuming that, we're a desperate group of people, and we don't have much to pay for, and I think it can be forgotten that we are also a business. Yeah,
and I think that's important to know, and it is the less on the surface, the less glamorous side. It's the side that if you say a charity is a business, it sounds cold and it sounds like, well, it shouldn't be, but that's the reality. It's a reality that if you want to help people, then I feel like charities, people who have worked in charities for years and years and years, are in some ways the best place to help people, because they understand the importance of that balance. I guess they would be good people for government, is because they understand that you've got to make money. They understand that you need to have an income and there's so many things you need to pay for, but they also understand that the final goal is to help people as much as possible. I think it's a shame that, like you say, it's sort of that stigmatization, and it's seen as just like, people are just doing it out of the kindness of their heart, and it all sounds nice, and that's what volunteering is for. But in the end, you do need to get money to pay for these things. And
you need to get money to make money as well. I think that's one thing that people don't always consider as well. Like in fundraising, you can look at any statistics. There'll always be a correlation between how much money you invest in fundraising and how much money you get out. You'll always make more money the more you invest in fundraising. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. That's quite a brash statement. But okay, if you look at the bigger charities fundraising, the more you invest into it, you're essentially multiplying. Your income.
Okay, so then on the flip side, where do you think some charities waste money? Like either charities that you might have given to and then you found something out, or maybe within your own charity, you don't have to be specific about. But do you think there's some areas, like for me personally, I would say, I would love to know how much, I think so much post goes out, and I don't know how much, to pay for the design of the post that goes out, and the postage and all of that. How much of that actually does any good, or the marketing side of stuff. It's like that skincare product that you use, The Ordinary. They don't do any marketing.
No, they're fantastic.
And I'm just wondering, is that an area? Could marketing be cut back, or is it vital? Or I mean, what do you think? Is there any areas that you go, I don't think that's needed as much, or that can be cut back a bit, or puts you off a charity? In my
experience, no, because like a lot of the cold door drops that I was saying earlier that we send out every Christmas. I can't remember the figure. It's almost £1 million we spend on postage just at Christmas time. But we generate it's honestly 30-fold income we get from it.
But is that directly from the post?
Yes, it's worth it.
Oh, okay.
It sounds, and I understand. For some people it's an inconvenience and they're being pestered, and I get we do get complaints from people saying you're wasting so much paper and postage. But the reality is that it works. Same with marketing as well. and especially in this world where everything's going digital, like it's competitive. You need a solid marketing strategy.
I guess that's where
to
the
put yourself out there, and that's how you retain supporters. And I think especially in this sort of culture, we move on very quickly, don't we? I feel like there's not as many people in the younger generation that are as loyal to charities, maybe. This is just from my experience, and this is just me, with the charity that I work with. A lot of our loyal supporters are the older generation.
Right.
And I do wonder if, this culture that we're in of just, having to get things instantly and moving on quickly. We've got so much, variety of charities that we might want to fund and choose from. I don't think we retain supporters as well. Yeah, as well as.
Yeah, the interest of our
generation
might be a lot more short attention span type thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that's interesting. So your main sort of stable or long running supporters are the older generation then.
Yep.
So what's it like?
Pretty solidly.
Really? So do you know that's typical for other charities, or you're not sure?
I mean, I think definitely in my area of fundraising, obviously a lot of our donors are extremely wealthy, and they probably, they've been working their whole life to sort of acquire that level of wealth. I guess the younger people that we manage, a lot of their wealth is inherited.
So it could be that. It could just be that younger people get a chunk of money and they give a bit to charity and then they don't give again.
And there is actually, I really enjoy looking into like the consumer behaviour side of fundraising, because it's interesting, because the older generation generally, from studies, they seem to just like to give a steady amount every year financially. This is very, very generally speaking.
Yeah.
But the younger people, or the younger generation, there's this whole new demand that they want to become more involved. It's funny. I feel like our parents always talk about how we're like so entitled, but it's kind of true in the fact that younger people want more for their money. So they'll want to try, at our charity, they'll want to volunteer. They'll want to come in and see our services being delivered.
Yeah.
They'll want to get their businesses involved, which is really great. But it's interesting that, this generation that's up and coming, we're kind of a bit more demanding in what we get back.
So is that in every area of fundraising? Like, even the small donors and regular sort of £10 a month, or?
I think generally, yeah. I think our generation's a bit more. I don't want to say led from the heart, but I don't know. Do you think that we're quite? Do you think that as a charity supporter, for the charities that you support, you want to receive something back?
It's definitely a bonus.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely. So I support Amnesty, and they give you a quarterly like magazine where they tell you the work they've done, and that was definitely a bonus of just like, oh sweet, So I think so, and I used to think a few years ago, I don't want to give to charities money, I just want to give my time.
Yeah.
But then that was an idealistic view.
Yeah, and that's the thing, we have to turn so many people away because we just don't have the opportunities. Like, that's not what we. It wouldn't be economical for us to spend money to open up all these opportunities for people.
And in the end, it's just to make them feel better, isn't it? Like, it's like that's what I think anyway. It's like, people come down, they want to do something, a bit of soup kitchen for a day, or they're seeing a film, and I'm just talking from my own personal thing. You want to feel like you're the hero for a day, but actually the strain that can put on charity, just give them the money. Like, like you've had celebrities that want to help out, haven't you? You don't have to say the celebrity or whatever, but what have been some of those experiences where celebrities want to get involved, but actually it's just a bit of a pain type thing?
Yeah, so we have quite a few celebs that do support the charity. One notable supporter, they wanted to help out our like temporary centres that we run every year, but they didn't want any publicity, which initially I sort of understood. I was like, do you know what? This person just wants to help. They want to just do a good thing. However, we then had to close essentially a lot of the shelter down for them because they were high profile. They wanted to sort of do it almost exclusively. Lost my train of thought.
It's all right. I've had it so many times.
Where was I?
Yeah,
Came
you
into
had
the
to shut it
centre.
down. They didn't want to be. They didn't want to be
Yeah.
known about
Yeah.
that they were doing it.
Yeah. So they can't say any names.
You say he or she.
So yeah, initially I understood that, and I was like, that's a really and this is a subject that I just love. So I was like, oh, that's really nice of them that they just want to do it. They're so humble. However, they're like a huge channel into bringing awareness to the charity and what we do, and it is a shame when they don't want to do it publicly, or at least let us bring some awareness to the fact that they've done it, because these people that have got huge followings, especially on social media, are a huge gateway for us to get more support.
Well, if you think about it, this person, if they'd made it public what they were doing, and they'd done it in the proper way, done it with you, and done it in the right sort of social media, and done it sort of structured that they were doing this and they were helping out, it would be really interesting. Imagine the amount of money that could have got from that.
I know.
There's all that money that wasn't actually gained.
Yeah,
because they wanted to stay anonymous.
We lost workforce because we had to shut down part of the centre. Then that was additional work for the next group of volunteers coming in.
So exactly. So taking into account, they didn't want to be known. They didn't want it to be public. So that's one load of loss of money. And secondly, you've had to do all this stuff to accommodate for them, which doesn't help the whole running of the service. It completely disrupts everything. And the people you're trying to help, it then obviously has a knock-on effect and doesn't help them as much. So that's two big chunks of loss of money in different ways. So it is just mainly for them. Like, if they don't actually think about it or look into it or talk with someone, what is the best way for them to help, they're just doing it to feel better.
Yeah. And it's a very difficult balance to get right, because you think, it's good to give them the opportunity, because and you want to hope that they can have a good experience. They'll come back and they'll continue supporting, and maybe next time they'll endorse us. But then at the same time, it's weighing up, is it are we losing out more than
sure yeah you don't want to offend them and then they don't give again,
No.
especially they're huge, high profile. So on that sort of a similar subject, talking about sort of that cost benefit type situation, that's like weighing up how much to take from a big giver. You all right? Sorry listeners, but so when another example then, I guess, is do you ever turn down donations from big donors, or do you ever consider turning down donations from big donors?
Yeah, we definitely have done, and there's definitely like a due diligence process for large donations. We, like the senior management team, have to consider any donations that come in above, I think it's 20,000, especially if they're not an existing supporter or like they're not close to the charity. And that would be mainly to weigh up whether they could sort of pose a threat to our reputation, to our work, to our values. So if there's people that, I guess their values would compromise ours, or they've been maybe controversial in the media, we might not want to be associated with them, then we definitely have turned down donations. I know we've turned down donations from, I think there's an oil company that wanted to donate like a lot of money to us, and we turned them down.
Really? Mm-hmm. Do you know how much roughly it might have been?
I think it was about 50,000.
50, okay. Do you agree with that?
I think I do.
Really?
So there was one donation we had recently from a very, very high profile supporter who gave a considerable gift to the charity, and following the donation, this supporter or this individual had made a few comments publicly.
Just controversial comments.
Yeah, against a certain group of people, or group that a lot of people would identify with. And that caused a lot of offence to people working in the charity, a lot of our members who are homeless that we help. So it just didn't sit right with them that we should be taking money from someone who
has said controversial comments.
Yeah. Yeah.
about a certain group, prejudiced, I guess, could be seen as prejudiced
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah.
Whether they were or not is to be seen, and is debatable. So yeah, so in situations like that, and situations where you've got oil companies, you think it's right not to accept the money?
It's difficult because I think in the long term, yes, because for people, if we'd have taken money from this supporter and there was a big public relationship with the supporter and the public knew what she'd said and it also didn't sit right with them, they would then associate that with our charity.
Would it bother you if you were giving to?
But this is thinking about the reputation of the charity and if we're going to be able to attract and retain our supporters if they are then associating us to be working with someone who's endorsing.
Would they drop out? Like, I get it.
Yeah, people do.
What, because of association?
Yeah.
Why? Would you, on a personal level, would you? So if you give to a horse charity, if that horse charity was associated with, let's say, the CEO of, I don't know, an oil company, let's just say, and the horse charity accepted a donation from this CEO, would that bother you? Would you stop giving?
I guess I'd want to look into. I guess I'd want to look into the reason where the money came from.
Well, they're the CEO of an oil company, so it's their money. They've spent their life in oil.
But is it like a massive profit they made from the company that they're just deciding to give away, or is it a personal donation?
Personal donation, let's say. Because for me, it's just.
But I don't know. By taking the donation, are you then encouraging? When you take a donation, you're almost in the mindset that you want to welcome more. Then, and if you take, say, money from an oil company, is that then inviting them to continue giving? And in that sense, is that then encouraging them to continue doing the work they're doing, which is damaging to the environment?
To be fair, if an oil company is giving that money to charity, and your whole charity is about stopping fossil fuels or whatever, which the horse charity and the homeless charity you work for now aren't really about that. They might have a little subsect where they talk a little bit about climate change, but they're not about that primarily. If someone is giving that, and that is money that they've earned and is going to a charity, then that charity is doing good work, like, surely that's... I mean, a great example is, okay, so let's say something like Greenpeace. So they would be the prime example of a charity that wouldn't take oil. But surely, if someone who's been in oil all their life is giving you loads of money, or even the company is giving you loads of money, and they know what Greenpeace do, they know that they go to places where they're drilling and they completely disrupt it, they know what they do, then surely... take that money and use it against these oil people.
But I feel like it's also...
So they don't reinvest, because then that money could go back into reinvesting in oil. But if it's going to Greenpeace, then...
I feel like there's a slight... I feel a very slight political stance in charities who don't accept these donations by making a stance. So it's sort of being, trying to...
It's
they go low, we go high. As the Obamas would say. But like... In terms of making a stance to say, like, we can cope without you, like, we can do this without a damaging, unethical...
So do you think it's more of a public image then than the money?
Probably more than the money thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Because in the long term, that could affect your income on who decides to give to you based on what stories there are against you and what public names you're associated against. So for the long term, yeah, definitely.
I mean, fair enough.
Because there's charities like Oxfam they've still got a massive dent in their reputation after the scandals over the last few years they had.
Yeah, but that's completely different. That's completely different.
I'm just saying, like, people don't forget these.
Oh no, I agree.
These stories that they hear.
I agree, but the Oxfam thing was workers in Haiti who were in theory, were obviously supposed to be there to help the citizens of Haiti. To recover and to get out of poverty, and they were using sex workers. Like that is completely different.
No, I'm not saying what they're doing, but I'm saying the fact that when charities are in the media and charities, like, we can't do anything wrong. I feel like we're expected to be, we have to do everything right. We can't make mistakes. Yeah, of course that was a mistake, but I mean in terms of the coverage that gets and the...
Sure, I get that, but I don't think that may be the case, and fair enough. I completely agree, and obviously you've worked in charities and I haven't. It may be the case that is what it's like, but I don't think we should be holding charities. I don't think we should be holding them to these perfect standards. Like, they are a group of people, they are an organization, and they're trying their best, and we need to call them out when they go wrong. But I think there's this thing, like, okay, take Oxfam for example. I like Oxfam. They're not the best charity in the world. There are some problems. Even before all this stuff came out about, the sex workers and stuff, there's some issues with Oxfam. But on the whole, they seem to do very good work. I think it's a shame that people completely disavow the whole of the charity because of these mistakes.
It is a shame. I feel like we massively scrutinise charities. Again, I think it goes back to our expectations that, we're supposed to be all lovely, cheery people.
It all needs to be perfect. And I don't know. I feel I'm just a bit in conflict. I get what you're saying, and I would like to see how much of an effect these things have. Not the Oxfam thing, but like donors like, a controversial celebrity, how much of an impact that makes.
I mean, also
on donors.
I don't think we've considered the internal impact it has as well on staff, and especially for huge charities like Oxfam. The charity that I work for is a national charity. We've got 700 staff. If there's, this controversial statement that was put out by this supporter who made that big donation, there was so much internal politics that went on behind the scenes, and I guess you've got to think about your staff and think about, if that's going to impact their work and if that's going to impact what they think of the charity and if they want to continue working at the charity. Some people were really disappointed in some of the actions that we took, and yeah, I think that's just as important to consider the staff that you're retaining. I think fair enough if you're a very small charity and there's 10 of you, you're likely to be on the same page. The majority of you are likely to be on the same page versus a charity of 700 people.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to figure out how I feel about it. Like, there's really, really good points, and I guess what you're talking about is the actual practicalities of the charity. Like, could the charity crumble from within? That's one thing that's very possible if, people aren't happy. Could it crumble from outside if the public image is ruined? I guess for me as a person, I guess if I take it to an extreme and see how I feel about it, if I was working for, let's say Amnesty, just because I'm given at the moment, and, they do human rights stuff, and I think that's really important. If I was working for Amnesty and they got a huge donation from someone who had, let's just be really extreme, and committed a massacre, would I want us to not accept that donation?
I think with stuff like that, it would be interesting to see how the charity responds to it, because I think for that example that you've used, obviously it's not true, but if that would happen, I think it would be very different if then Amnesty decided to bring that supporter in and try and start a conversation with them about the impact that their actions have had, and try and see if they can come to some sort of harmony between the two of them, and even try and persuade them. And I think that's one thing that was considered with this individual in the instance at the charity I'm working for, but it wasn't an option.
Yeah.
To start that conversation, it was kind of too far in. So I think definitely, and I think in terms of like if an oil company gave to Greenpeace and Greenpeace then turned around and said, okay, well, if we can work together and you can maybe reconsider some of your
moving into
the
different
works that
energy or something. Yeah.
Then we'll accept your money. I think it depends. Yeah, if there's any way that the charity can then work with that controversial donor.
But I guess that has problems as well, because then, that celebrity or that person you're talking about who donated a lot of money but did controversial comments, if they came into the offices, that might upset a load of people. Some people might quit, and then you've got all those sort of issues, haven't you? I don't know. I just think for me personally, if I was working in a place and someone really controversial was giving, it's different if you're giving to someone else. Like, if you're giving to someone controversial, I completely disagree with that. I'd be walking out of the offices if you're doing something to help them. But if they're giving to you, no strings attached, they don't get anything out of it. They're just giving money. I know it's an idealistic thing, and I know I'm just talking psychologically, but it doesn't bother me personally. But and I'm just trying
It's more than money, though. I think it's so much more than just using their money, especially with high-profile people.
Yeah. Because it's the relationship as well, I guess, isn't it? Sure. No, it's a really, really good point. And
it's tricky, especially when you're talking about such huge amounts of money that could make such a big impact. Yeah, I know. I appreciate it. I'm kind of torn as well.
Do you think?
I didn't really know what the right way was to respond to it. It's just a difficult balance.
Do you think there's some bandwagoning that goes on in charities?
You're going to have to tell me what bandwagoning means.
So
like jumping on the bandwagon.
Oh, yeah. Like, do you think... okay, I mean, the example is the Black Lives Matter protest this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's, like, charities that just jump on it because it's trending as opposed to really caring about the causes? I'm not saying that your charity did, but do you think there's some of that goes on?
I mean, I think there's that everywhere. I think whether you're a charity or not, companies, businesses, I think all felt the pressure that they should be jumping on the bandwagon. And if they didn't, they'd be seen as racist or not supporting the movement. So, yeah, I do think so. But I do think at the same time there's more... I think it says a lot on the charities that actually have tried to make sustainable or long-term change as opposed to just... getting involved and making noise in the midst of, for example, BLM for that movement. I know the charity that I'm working for, there was a lot of upset. Some people didn't think that we made enough noise. However, on the flip side, we have actually invested in to carry out research on the effect homelessness has on the BAME community, because I think they looked into it, and the last bit of research that was done on it was like back in 2010.
Right.
Which is pretty shocking. So yeah, I think that was really great that they've done something to actually make a long-term change rather than just posting a black square or putting a heartfelt statement out. Which of course I understand that
But it's not enough. It's not enough. No one would say that was
It's
enough.
on the surface if they're just doing it for a day and they're not gonna. There's gonna be no, long-term.
And that's good. And
afterwards.
That sounds positive. Getting a researcher in to go through that stuff, and I guess it can be a little bit. I don't know, a bit sickening when something like the BLM protest and all this stuff comes out, and there's the debate happens again, and awareness happens, and then you just see companies and charities just doing sort of just the standard sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess it's all about trying to make real change. And if you actually want to do something about it, then real stuff has to happen. And what for you puts you off a charity? We'll start with that. So what do you see when you're as a giver or as a customer or something? What sort of has put you off in the past? Or what attracts you to charities? Is it purely the cause? Is there other factors that come into play?
Yeah, I think I'm just a sucker for the cause, to be honest. I love donkeys. So I was I was a product of their marketing.
So you give to a donkey charity.
I give to a donkey charity, yeah. I don't know. I think definitely charities that do hold themselves accountable and do follow up on their actions. You know, in terms of whilst you see a lot of these charities putting big statements out on what they need, also I guess also publicising what has been done and the progress that has been made. I think we don't see enough of that in some charities, and especially at the moment when, you know, charities are struggling so much for raising funds. They're trying so desperately to just put out the need and just focus on that. But yeah, I think charities that are good at reporting back at the progress they've made, as a supporter, I think is really important. And I am one of those people that does love reading my like quarterly reviews that I get, as you do. And also charities that collaborate. I think we shouldn't just lump charities into their own little, I don't know, emblem, as you'd have it. Like, you know, you have corporates and you have charities. That's it. Whereas I think it's good to see collaboration of charities in the community with councils, and companies try and spread the charity love.
Yeah, try more integration and stuff.
Rather seeing them as separate entities.
Yeah.
More dynamically integrated.
Nice. That sounds very corporate.
I know. I thought of
dynamically integrated.
3-dimensional.
And in terms of like general attitudes towards charities in our society or whatever, how would you like to see it change? What do you think, you know, is the problems we have with our attitudes towards charities? I mean, I guess we've touched on it a little bit.
I think stop seeing charities as having to be perfect and respect overheads.
Respect overheads.
Or just appreciate that, like, overheads are just as important to fund as... that's coming from someone who works in fundraising. That's because I guess that's the main exposure I've had.
Pay me.
But other aspects of charities I'm not as familiar with. I know fundraising a lot more, but yeah. I think just actually think about what makes a charity run well, what makes the management work, and what makes the charity retain its supporters. It's good admin costs, it's good systems in process. Like, yeah, it's crucial. And I just think I think it's such a shame that it's so overlooked and so shunned. In people's sort of decision making,
especially for our generation. If we are the sort of generation that wants stuff back, that stuff costs money. You know, if you want a quarterly review, someone needs to write that up. Or if you're the sort of person that...
Exactly. And like, yeah. Sorry, I just felt very passionately about that.
That's right. Did you just want to say exactly? Okay, just exactly.
I was just going to say how I really appreciate like receiving packs in the post. And I appreciate that someone's actually had to spend weeks producing that. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and you can always stop it if you don't want it anymore, if it puts you off or whatever. And especially, like we were saying before, the people that want to get involved and the people that want to do that as well as part of their donation, I guess, then it all costs money. You know, even if you're calling someone on the phone to arrange coming down, that's someone's time who's getting paid from the donations that are given. And it's, yeah, I think you're right. It's that. Yeah, not letting it put you off. You know, if you see that people are getting paid quite a bit, or on the face of it, don't feel like that people should be paid pennies for charities.
No. If you want good service and you want to speak to. No, it's gone. Sorry, I'm just echoing you. I get your vibes.
Cool. Is there anything else behind the scenes of charities that you've really taken you by surprise or been really interesting? Like when you've gone into both your jobs, like was there anything that was really different or many people wouldn't know what goes on? what's the environment like? What's was there anything that sort of was just taking you by surprise a little bit working for charities?
I mean, I guess I'm quite young, so I don't have much to compare it to versus other non-charity jobs I've had.
Well, yeah, but did you have any preconceptions of what it might be like and that sort of change?
This is a good point. I had a preconception that charities were really disorganized.
Right.
And I guess that made me think like it's really important to have, systems in place, admin in place, to be able to effectively run a charity. So actually, yeah, I do remember when I started at the blind charity in New Zealand, just before I started, I got couriered like this massive A4 pack, a really comprehensive pack, like welcoming me to the charity. It'd obviously been like professionally printed. And I was like, oh, I thought like, I don't know, I thought I'd just get something on a scrap bit of paper when I started just to be like, welcome to this charity. But I guess that goes to show again, like that they are a business as well. It's not just, it's not just a charity.
It's professionally run. Okay, so that was an interesting thing for you. Thought it might be a bit all over the place.
Yeah.
And again, back to the sort of customer side of it, or I guess just the citizen side of it, either as a person who works for charities or a person who gives to charities or doesn't give to charity. Do you think people should give to charity? Like there's this, there's a guy called Peter, I've forgotten his surname. Yeah, it's completely gone. He talks about, he's done a few books on sort of morals and ethics. He's done one on animals. He's done one, I think, called The Expanding Circle. It's completely gone his name. But he did a book about, I think it's called How to Save a Life or something like that. And in it, I think it's all about how we should all, above a certain level, obviously, if you're living in poverty or you don't make enough money, then you should be giving a certain amount to charity. I think it was like 10% of your income or something. What are your views on that? Do you think we should as a society be, I'm not saying we enforce it in law or anything, but morally, ethically, do you think people should give to charity if they can? Or do you think it's not a moral right or wrong? It's just completely up to you.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's a very personal decision, isn't it? And I think obviously if you can and there's something you're passionate about, then great. But I do also massively agree with the whole charity starts at home phrase. If there's stuff that you feel like you're doing enough good in your life otherwise, if you're being an active citizen in your community or you're volunteering for some cause that you feel passionately about, I don't think you necessarily need to give to charity on top of that because it's more morally the right thing to do. Yeah, I think it just depends on each individual and what they deem as I feel like saying a good thing to do is very black and white, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I think it's just whatever works for people, and there's some people who with the whole charity starts at home, especially in this generation where I think, families are a lot more fragmented, broken. There might not be as much of that community feel that they feel like they can give much back to their own family and in their own home. So yeah, in that sense, I think it's great that charities are there as an option to sort of be able to give something back and do something good for a good cause.
I do agree with you. I do agree that I think people, I don't think we should be guilted into giving, like you say, like people who do stuff for a community or people who are just lovely human beings, they're spreading that love. One of our friends, Jez, he's just the biggest spreader of love I've ever met. Like he just does it with his being, and he sends you the longest messages, which are just always lovely, no matter if you've known him for years or you've known him for a day, and so I do agree with that. Do you think sometimes, I have a bit of mixed feelings about the charity starts at home. I do agree with it in some ways, in that there's no point giving to charities and trying to help the world if you're an abusive father or if you're just not very nice to people.
I mean, an abusive father might give out of guilt though to try and
Well, yeah, sure, but
Segue it.
it's a bit pointless, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, but even not even that extreme. You know, if you're just not very nice to people, it's probably a good idea to start at the foundations of your everyday. So I do agree with that. But do you think it can sometimes be used as an excuse? I sometimes hear it from some people who are in a position where they can give money, and when the subject of charity comes up, they sort of use, oh well, charity starts at home, almost like to as an excuse not to
Yeah.
give to charity.
I mean, I think it's a good. I think it's just a good base, like a basis to have. It's just a charity starts at home, but they can continue it.
Yes, nice.
Yeah, I just see it as a baseline. I don't necessarily see it as, you should just be focusing on yourself
Yeah.
and that's the end of that. So what you're saying, people that could give money to charity use it as an excuse.
Sometimes I'm not saying all. I'm just saying I've sometimes heard it. It seems like it's in that context. Like,
Yeah, I guess it's probably thrown around a bit too much now.
Again,
As
if you're talking about people who are amazing people and then they don't have lots of money, and I don't mean in that context, but I mean someone who is a really nice person anyway, and they do a lot for their family and whatever. If you're sort of bringing up charities and they don't give to charity because charity starts at home, it just seems like a bit of an excuse and a bit of end of the conversation. I remember when we met someone in New Zealand and we were out on a walk with them, and I think I brought up the whole thing about homelessness and was just wanted to have an interesting conversation about, you know, the causes and the solutions and all that sort of stuff. And he said, oh, well, you know, charity starts at home.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That in that sense, it sort of shuts down the conversation. It's sort of like, oh, we shouldn't be giving to anyone else but our own family.
I think a lot, especially with stuff like homelessness, when you say that, I think there's some things that people just accept aren't going to change,
right?
like
Yeah.
homelessness, and I think that's a big thing in I guess all of Western culture, that we just accept that homelessness is a part of where we live and we're always going to see it. So I do think some people, yeah, I guess don't really have the hope that things will really change, or they don't feel like, yeah, they've got the power to make change, maybe.
And I guess it plays back in some people, it plays back into that stigma you were talking about of like, especially for homeless people, of like they brought it on themselves type thing.
Yeah. People don't feel like a personal responsibility for it or accountability for it.
So how do you feel about that now? I don't think you actually went into how you feel about homeless people now. So back in the day, you just had I don't want to say naive, but
Yeah,
a less informed view, to be as diplomatic as possible, a less informed view than you do now. So how do you feel about homelessness now? Is it their fault? How much of it is their fault? Or, you know, what do you see when you think of homeless people, and what causes there are? Again, it doesn't have to be an expert point of view. It's not like you telling me, you know, all the bullet points of what the charity you work for do, but just what you've learnt personally, you know, that's informed your view on homeless people.
I think more than anything, it's made me realise how like broken our social services are in this country, to be honest. The lack of social housing we've got available, the lack of social services, mental health services, because I think that's the biggest, not as much driver, but that's a vital safety net that people who are falling into homelessness could be caught by to bring them back. And yeah, I had the sort of very generalized view that homelessness is, it just means rough sleepers. It's people who have drinking and drug abuse or addictions, and that's it. Whereas in actual fact, rough sleeping is the tip of the iceberg. There are so many hidden forms of homelessness that we don't know about. Sofa surfing, temporary accommodation, sleeping in hostels. Yeah, it's scary that it's a lot more hidden than what we see. I think at the moment the latest stat is 170,000 families and individuals are currently homeless.
What, in England?
In England, yeah.
Or UK?
England.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Right.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's a lot.
It's either England or GB.
Okay.
Yeah, and the majority of people's homelessness is caused by the end of short-term tenancies. So,
Right.
Your landlord kicking you out,
Right.
and family breakdowns.
Right, yeah.
And yeah, much to the contrary, usually the alcohol and substance abuse, which people think is often the cause of homelessness, is often a product of homelessness.
Yeah.
It's sort of a numbing of what's happened to them and trying to escape from it mentally.
Well, exactly. And it's like you were saying about that safety net. It's like, we all take for granted our safety nets in life. We all do. And you're saying about that woman that you met that had gotten raped that morning. And, within reason, most people in this country, they would hopefully, touch wood, feel that if something horrendous like that happened to them, they would at least have the safety net of a family, safety net of the police, safety net of the council, or and the NHS, and you'd have a safety net. But some people just don't, and some people, even if they do have some access to that stuff, the NHS, because it's free and whatever, they might not use it, and they might be. And I think another thing that I think is really a massive shame about the stigma with homelessness is this idea of putting your own experiences subconsciously, seeing homeless people with your own mind and seeing them like as if your experiences and your feelings, like, oh, we'll just stand up, stop drinking, get a job. It's not as simple as that. And even if it was, even if they could walk in a job tomorrow, the big thing for me is trauma and mental health.
Yeah, I think mental health conditions. Oh God, I wish I wrote down the stats of this because it's really interesting. But it's like something like 70% of people, I think, of our members that we sort of dealt with have developed mental health problems as a result of becoming homeless. And some of them are so extreme it takes years to be able to, even begin to recover from some of the traumatized.
Well, I'm talking even further back than that. I'm thinking, well, what did have these people gone through? Like, we're lucky to have, strong minds and have grown up with relatively no trauma, and but you can't think how someone who's gone through that can think. You can't think, oh, well, if they're offered a job, let's say they're offered a job, okay, and they don't go to the job. They don't go to the job interview. They just get really drunk instead. Now, the stigma would be, well, they had a job. They could have had that job. They decided to get drunk. They're stupid. They deserve to be on the street. Well, it's like,
why don't we look at why did they get drunk in the first place?
Exactly. The depression, anxiety. It's not like you going for a job. It's not like you turning up and just, trying to be being a bit nervous and putting on a suit or whatever. It could be the most terrifying thing in their life. And there's just so much in people's past that their mental health and their mental structure is just so different that we just can't see it like that. It's so damning to just write people off in that way. So yeah,
definitely, and I guess it just highlights, that we need to stress, for combating these huge issues we've got in our society. It's getting to the root cause of the problem, not just alleviating it a short term as a relief.
Cool. Well, I think we can fairly wrap it up there, unless there's anything else you'd like to chat about or mention, or any.
I mean, we could keep talking.
Yeah.
But it's probably been a while.
Yeah, it's been coming up to an hour and a half. Jeepers. So yeah, I guess we can leave it there. But yeah, if anyone has any opinions on what we talked about, I've had a bit of a gap during September of sort of, I think it was a 4-week gap or something with the podcast, but I'm trying to get back into it now. I'm trying to get back into talking to people, and I'd really like, if you're listening, if you've already been on the podcast, or if you know it, or you don't want to come on the podcast yourself, or please just let me know if there's anyone you think would be really interesting, either to talk about what we're talking about today or talk about something completely different. I'd be really interested to I really want to get a diversity of different opinions on here, and people to challenge me. I'm very keen for someone. The thing I'm most keen on, actually, to shout out to anyone listening, is for someone to come on here and to challenge me about any or all of views that I've expressed in any podcast episode I've done so far. I really, really want to be challenged. The conversations I've had have been amazing, and there's been a lot of back and forth and a bit of debate and disagreement. But I really, really want someone to come on and if there's something they really disagree with me saying, I won't be offended. I welcome it. So please, if you're listening, if you know someone who you think would be able to challenge my views, then please contact me, or leave a comment on YouTube or on my Facebook or wherever. But yeah, thank you very much, Emma.
Thank you.
It's been pretty good.
It has been fun.
Yeah, I think you were a bit nervous at the start, but once you got into it, it was flowed pretty well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.